Hello, and welcome to today's podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about energy. We've talked before about fatigue, which is a big issue for lots of people for a lot of different reasons. And the opposite of fatigue is energy. And it's really important to understand how energy is produced in our body. So today, we're going to try really hard not to get too deep and in the weeds of the science, but give an introduction on where your energy comes from, because it's important.
Just a super brief 30,000 foot view of energy production. So, essentially what happens is we have to produce ATP. ATP is something that we derive from our cells, specifically from the mitochondria, which are little powerhouses of our cell. And these are what drives us for energy production, essentially. These mitochondria are important little fellas. And they're in every cell in our body. And some cells have a lot and some cells have fewer. But essentially, we need those mitochondria to work very efficiently. And so essentially what we do is we take the food that we eat, and that is converted into molecules, which we run through these different cycles and oxidative phosphorylation parts of our mitochondria. I told you I'm going to stay out of the weeds, and I'm trying to stay out of the weeds easily. So, but what we need to do is we need to make sure that we have to understand that the food we take in is what produces our energy. Now, it's deeper than that. It's way more complicated than that. And we'll get into that too here at the very end. But there's a lot of factors that we can do to produce more energy and help ourselves to be more efficient energy producers is really a key.
And I think it's important to note too that our mitochondria, as we age, are inevitably getting a little bit less efficient through the aging process, which is normal. There are ways that we can combat that. And also, so the aging process is one thing.
Right.
Metabolic dysfunction is another thing that can inhibit mitochondrial efficiency. And things like menopause and andropause also affect mitochondrial efficiency.
So there are several key factors, but you really can't say that there's one specific thing that affects it primarily, but they all have a contributing part to how our energy is produced. And so essentially some of the factors that do affect energy production in our mitochondria are diet, our nutrition, what we eat, how we eat it, and what we eat. It makes a big difference on that. And exercise is also one of the more important things, I think, personally, that can make the biggest impact and move the needle for energy production for us. Exercise is something that is very hard to come by sometimes. There's a lot of individuals and folks that have trouble with taking time or motivation to get out and do the exercise or the movements. But movement and exercise in general is very important. Also, kind of top on the list is sleep. Sleep is something that's so overrated or underrated. I'm sorry, it is underrated, but needs to be overemphasized, because that's when we repair. That's when things are really improving and we're trying to make the machine work more efficiently the next day. And if you're not getting sleep, then you're not going to be efficient and running as smoothly as you should be the next day. And everybody's felt that, whether you've been traveling or whether you do stay up too late and the next day have trouble. So that makes a difference.
Stress has a big impact on energy production as well.
Right. Yeah. Stress is a huge one. So that affects us from a lot of different aspects. And then, of course, we get into things like environmental toxins. There's a lot of environmental influence into those things that affect our mitochondria. Now, you got to remember, all this stuff affects the mitochondria. That is what is producing our energy. And so anything that affects that, whether it be chemicals, smokes, odors, things like that, exactly, additives, plastics, you name it, there's just all kinds of things. Even in the chemicals, herbicides, things like that stuff affects the effectiveness and efficiency of our mitochondria. And then, of course, there's genetic factors there's those things too. But just because we have a genetic trait or a genetic predisposition doesn't mean that we can't know that and effectively do the things potentially to help improve our efficiency as good as we can too. So, but yes, there are genetic factors that influence the function of our mitochondria. But overall, these things will affect our ATP production, and that's something that we need to really maximize. Just some basic statistics now too. The prevalence of diabetes and metabolic disorders, metabolic dysfunction, we've talked a lot about this, but we're talking about 34 million Americans have diabetes, and that's pretty incredible. And roughly about 34% of those have metabolic dysfunction in that respect. But I think we have talked about this before, that if the general population out there, that there is upwards of 90+% of us are metabolically dysfunctional, and in some respect, in some form, in some way, some more, some less, but it is truly out there. And it could be something as simple as resistance or lipid disorders.
And a lot of times, as far as insulin resistance, people don't know that they are insulin resistant until way late in the game, actually, because traditional medicine doesn't typically look at your fasting insulin score. And that's really the first sign that there is a problem or an issue.
Yeah. And the insulin is what drives the glucose into the cell. Whether it's a muscle cell or a brain cell or an intestinal cell, it's what drives the glucose into the cells. That glucose has to get into that cell to get to that mitochondria to get in there and produce energy. And if we have trouble with insulin resistance or an inability to move this glucose into that cell, or an inefficiency to do that within the cell, then we have trouble with production of ATP energy. So what can we do? What can we do to enhance our energy levels? I mean, we've talked about exercise recommendations. We really need to emphasize that significantly. And that can be done through a lot of different options: aerobic training, resistance training, but anything we can do to improve our cardiorespiratory system will help improve the efficiency of the mitochondria. If your body has to get used to performing an activity or an exercise, your body will adapt to that. And when it adapts to that, then it will improve its efficiency of its mitochondria. Now, your body's got the fully capable intelligence to get rid of the bad mitochondria and replace them with good mitochondria too. So there's ways to do that specifically with exercise. And that's the beauty of that. And that's something that's free. It doesn't take a lot of money to get out there and do some movement or exercise, so you can improve your quality of life by doing that.
I think I just want to note here that one of the reasons why exercise is so good at helping your mitochondria is that it can be uncomfortable. And when we make our body uncomfortable, it creates this activity inside our body that is like, oh, what do I need to do to sustain? And what do I need to do to overcome this discomfort? So
adaptation.
It's a great thing when you get uncomfortable, which is also why sauna and cold plunge are things that will also help increase
mitochondrial efficiency. Right. Yeah. There's plenty of studies out there to show that, and you can find them everywhere. But essentially, if we can get more mitochondria in our cell, because our body's requiring more energy, you're going to increase the number of mitochondria in those cells. It's not a fixed number. So they can increase in number, and then so you can increase your efficiency. So, and it's also going to boil down to, even for folks that are into the activities of elite activity or exercise or long distance running, et cetera, things like that, those things will tend to improve our overall recovery also. So now you're going to be efficient in producing the energy, and you're going to be able to recover. And that's something that I always talk about when I'm out doing any type of long distance running or any type of activity that takes more than basically an hour and a half of physical exercise, is your ability to recover. And so that's going to allow you to basically continue to go. Yes, we need to fuel our system, but the engine has to be able to run efficiently to be able to keep moving. So
So, what are some supplements that are good for mitochondrial health? I
Yeah.
think urolithin A is one. That's
Right.
MitoPure Timeline Nutrition
Yeah.
is a great one.
That's been shown to improve about 10 to 15% efficiency in mitochondrial efficiency. So that's a nice one that's out there. And honestly, we take those too. I take those. I'll be straightforward. Coenzyme Q10. So CoQ10 is very important. Magnesium. Your cells can't run without magnesium. Magnesium is there for the energy production too. B vitamins, omega-3s, omega-3 fatty acids, good healthy fats. Those are the ones also that are important for that. But antioxidants, like the ALA, alpha lipoic acid, your body produces those things. And so it's good to have that for cellular health.
And as we're talking about antioxidants, it's probably a good idea to talk about free radicals and the things that the antioxidants are there to kind of
Correct.
combat.
Clean it up. Exactly. So if we've got free radicals being produced from an inefficient or a non-functional, a low-functioning mitochondria cell, then these free radicals are floating around, creating damage, whether it's be in our brain or our arteries. So it does happen, and those things can be controlled. So
Nutritional strategies.
even had some folks talk about methylene blue, of course. So that's another. There's a lot, and I may want to just put the disclaimer here. This is not all inclusive. We do not have everything listed here. There are a lot of things out there that you hear or read about that may or may not affect mitochondrial efficiency or energy production. And still a lot of studies need to be done. And I'm sure everybody can find a study that will prove that item is important. And maybe it does, maybe it is important, but it's the overall outcome of energy production and lack of fatigue that makes the difference in the end product.
And I do want to just say again, I say this all the time, but something that affects you may not affect another person in the same way. And that's why in this type of practice, it really is about seeing what works for you, because it might not work the same for me. And so unfortunately or fortunately, it's a little bit of an experiment to see what feels really good in your body.
It's a process. It is truly a process to try to customize what works well for you. So it truly is. I mean, for instance, we're talking about bioidentical hormones, but bioidentical hormone replacement, sometimes that works well for people and sometimes it doesn't work so well for people. But that's also one of the things that we can do to help improve our energy production is bioidentical hormone replacement. So, I mean, it's been proven that testosterone and estrogen, progesterone, and thyroid balance, those things will create an improvement in overall health, vitality, and energy production. It will do that. And there's plenty of studies to show that. And as obviously we talked about at the beginning of this, is that as we age, these things decline, these numbers decline. And as a result, well, people think, well, it's just part of aging to get tired or feeling old. Well, okay, there's reasons for that. And so we can slow the process down, or we can actually control its progression by replacing those.
Okay, so nutritional strategies for mitochondrial health.
Yeah. That diet, that nutritional food, what we're eating. I mean, your body is replacing its entire self every 7 years. Some structures sooner, your cells replace quickly, but and the bone is constantly being turned over and muscles being developed, regrown. And so it's a process that is ongoing. We are not static. And so if we will just do our due diligence to increase our amounts of whole foods, good sources for protein. And it doesn't mean maybe you're vegetarian, maybe you're carnivore. It doesn't matter, but there are ways to get these nutrients into our system to help restore and improve the function of our cells.
And it's really important to also listen to your body when you do eat things that don't really agree with it. I mean, I think there have been a lot of things that over the years, things that I could eat and I can't eat anymore because I've become more in tune with listening
Right.
to how my body responds after I eat certain foods.
Right. So you're getting our simple carbohydrates, the highly processed carbs and things out of our diet. And then once you start eating some of the whole foods, you're getting the good protein sources, the good leafy vegetables, and you're increasing your fiber, your system doesn't tolerate that stuff as much as it used to. And it kind of can throw the GI tract off. So that can affect us, whether it be bloating, gas, or diarrhea. I mean, it can happen. So, but that kind of just lets you know where that's at.
For sure. So, practical tips to reduce, let's say, to improve energy and vitality. Practical tips.
Yeah. So essentially, it starts with sleep. We got to get good sleep. Sleep hygiene is so important for folks to be able to regenerate and regrow and repair. So I think that's certainly something that's very significant.
Hydration, making sure you're getting enough fluids, electrolyte replacement if needed. That's one thing that I think a simple thing that people overlook a lot. And it doesn't have to be some special electrolyte powder. It could be a little bit of salt in your water to help.
There's a lot of things that we can use and suggest for folks that would help them maintain good electrolyte balance. And that's important for cellular health and function. Stress management. Who doesn't have stress these days? There's all kinds of stress out there in many different forms. So it's just a matter of how you manage it. So
Yeah. Stress management is key. And along that kind of gets in there that people don't think about a lot is mindfulness, which helps to manage stress, but also helps us get in tune with our body. When we are being mindful, we can hear the things that our body is telling us about our health and about what's going on at the cellular level, to be honest.
so true. Yeah. But yoga or meditation, those things are very good too for just overall stress management. I mean, it's certainly something that we all don't take enough time to do, but it's very important. And of course, just getting regular health checkups, trying to find somebody, and whether it be your primary care, for your healthcare provider, or looking for a functional integrative practice like what we do, that to try to look at all the metabolic function parameters and biomarkers to see where the issues are. We like to catch stuff before it becomes a problem. So if you can have a good regular checkups by a good healthcare provider that will look into these details, looking at your insulin resistance, looking at how well, your body is performing its metabolic functions, will be helpful for you. So, but anyway, I think we've touched base on a lot of stuff here, but I think that it really all boils down to essentially just being aware, being in tune with your body, and knowing that what you do on a daily basis, what you eat, how you act, how active you are, these things will, in essence, in the long run, make a difference in your energy output and reduce fatigue.
Yeah. And so ultimately, I hope you've come away with maybe a few small action steps that you could implement to help increase mitochondrial function. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We're happy to talk about it.
All right. So small changes, big differences. So have a healthy day.